Hey there everybody, and welcome back to the Son of the Morning Comics channel, back after a short hiatus, so I figured we'd start off with some Black Label stuff. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you've probably heard me say that I'm a fan of Black Label books in general, not specifically. Now, I know a lot of people sort of look at them as being something secondary because they're not part of canon. Now, I also know I've mentioned this before that I'm not really much of a canon junkie as it is. I mean, like, Superman would be like 80-something years old. Batman would be like 80 years old. What is canon anymore anyway? And another thing that I wanted to mention too, and I know I've said this before, is that I think that Black Label books are a great way to introduce normies or non-comic book readers to comics, because and same thing goes for their predecessor, Elseworld stories. I think that they're a great way to introduce people to comics. You don't need to go into them knowing anything. You just have to sort of read and enjoy. So today we're looking at Joker Killer Smile by Jeff Lemire, with art by Andrea Sorrentino and lettering by Jordie Bellaire. Now, I'm a big fan of Jeff Lemire's writing, especially lately. I've really liked what he's been doing. Now, you can see here we got all three of the issues in this series. I believe that this one here is the variant cover. I'm not sure because it doesn't have the same sort of aesthetic as these two over here. Now, when I'm reading Black Label books, one of the things that I really love about them, and this is especially if you saw the video that I did on Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, the art in those books was absolutely fantastic. Loved every page of it. This one, not so much. And like I said, I am a big fan of Jeff Lemire. I'm really liking what he's been doing with Black Label on The Question. There'll be a review coming up on that as well. But I have to say, when you're looking at this cover right here, you're definitely looking at the best piece of art in this entire series, that of course being my own subjective opinion. So let's get into it here, starting with issue number 1. Nothing too important starting here at first, so we'll just skip to where things get important. Here we see the Joker up to his no good ways, and he is of course taken out by the Dark Knight himself, at which point he's sent to jail. Now, the story goes there is this psychologist here who's trying to get through to the Joker. Now, one of the things that I'm going to point out right away here is that I'm really not a fan of the way that the Joker is drawn in this book. If you check out the Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, I'm a much bigger fan of the depiction of the Joker in there. So anyway, this psychologist is trying to break into the Joker's mind to try to cure him. He is obviously unsuccessful. Now, he's told at some point here that he has 3 weeks to crack this case. If not, it's time to move on. At which point he goes home to his loving family here. They are happy to see him. And he's late, of course, which they comment about. But nevertheless, we have some, just a scene here of him spending time with his family. And it's clear that he very much loves his family. And that this is where things get a little bit interesting. They're sort of these little fairy tale things that are very Joker related, and that sort of comes along a little bit later. More talk here between him and his family. Like I was saying before, when I look for Black Label books, I'm looking for exceptional art, and there's nothing wrong with the art in this book. It's just not, it doesn't pop off the page in any way. It seems somewhat generic. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to like this style, but I'm not one of them. So that's just me. So he decides he needs to go back to work, telling his wife he needs to go. So he does eventually go back to the prison. We'll get there in a second. Now we have a little interlude. And I have to say, too, that this book is a little bit confusing at first because you don't really know what's going on. You know that this detective is trying to crack the Joker, but at the same time we also know that the Joker is trying to crack the detective. So he does finally go back to see the Joker, and Joker's talking all about Happyville, which is this place where he gets to do what he wants. Now, we flip the page again here, and you see the Joker is just antagonizing him. He goes to the washroom, splashes water on his face, and sort of takes off there. We see more of the Joker's handiwork here. Now, as the book goes on, you can sort of see that the detective is starting to notice some strange things. And that's kind of how the first story ends here. The Joker's in his cell drawing this big picture of this Smile character, and we're gonna find out more about that later. So, like I said, I wasn't too enthralled with this one to start with, although I do absolutely love this cover art. So we'll move along to book number 2. Same creative team working on this one. He's going to Arkham to visit the Joker, and the art in this is a little bit better than it was in the first one. Now, I still do have a problem with the depiction of the Joker in these books. To me, it's not the best depiction. And so now we get to really see the Joker messing with the detective. The detective has his head is served on a platter. He's wearing Joker makeup. The Joker is clearly messing with him. And then, of course, they are going to have their feast of brains, which is very interesting. Like I said, it's a little bit hard to follow here. Now, he goes back home, he's talking to his family again. This whole Mr. Smile thing keeps popping up. Now, flipping the page again, just some more dialogue between him and his son. His son goes to go into the basement. He tells him that he shouldn't go down there because that's his office, and he might see some things that he doesn't want to see. Possibly a little bit of foreshadowing there. Now, next goes back to Arkham to once again interrogate the Joker. And as he's interrogating the Joker sort of starts to let him know that things are not quite as they seem. And then, interesting thing here, I'll just read it to you. The Joker says to him, "Why don't you tell me something? I would love to hear about your first time with Anna." Anna being his wife. He freaks out because he doesn't understand how he knows his wife's name. He also knows his kid's name. And he starts freaking out on the Joker. His superior comes and removes him from the area. Now they're trying to figure out if he is sort of gone too far, if it's time to move on to a new case, but he can't do that. So he is deeply enthralled in the Joker case. Like I said, I'm not going to go over everything for you. And then he has this dream where he sees his wife and child as Joker zombies. But it's just a daydream, and he realizes everything is okay. But clearly you can see that he's starting to lose his grip on things. He goes into his office trying to figure things out. Once again, and it's a little hard to follow here exactly what's going on, but I equate this into him sort of descending into madness. Now, he does end up going back to Arkham to confront the Joker again, at which point the Joker is sort of telling him that things are not what they seem. The Joker is laughing out loud here. And interesting quote here, it says, "And so the blades and teeth of Mr. Smiles' happy machine began to spin and spin." So I think that is sort of just more foreshadowing that the detective is going crazy. He finds this book again. This keeps popping up. Of course, he goes to search for Anna, but he is unable to find them, and knocks on the door of the address that the Joker has given him. And at this point he goes in, and you can see he is becoming a Joker or Joker disciple, that sort of thing. And that's the way that this book concludes as we move along to number 3, which has the smile on it, which is interesting. Now, I wanted to read this first page to you because I find it very interesting. Clearly, we have a Joker behind bars, and a little sort of poem, if you will, where he's saying, "Happyville was sound asleep, all except one. Mr. Smiles was restless, and try as he might, but he could not sleep. You see, Mr. Smiles was trapped in the magic castle, and he could not leave." So, as we flip the page here, you can see that the Joker is now being approached by the detective who has now painted his face as a Joker. And this is where it really heats up in terms of the antagonism from the Joker. They are he comforts the detective, and there's one shot here I actually kind of like this picture. It's one of the few in the book that I actually do really like. So, the detective's trying to figure out what's going on. He's clearly descending into madness. He has decided that he is going to join the Joker, and he remarks, Now what do we do?" The Joker responds, "I already told you." So at that point, we flip the page again, and they are starting to let out all of the bad guys in Arkham. Now this here is really important, because the Joker has just informed the detective that it in fact hadn't been 3 weeks that he had been treating him. It had actually been more along the lines of 3 years, and in that 3 years the detective has forgotten all about his family and responsibilities. They've left him, and the Joker hands him a piece of paper with the address of where his wife and child are staying. So, of course, he goes into that after they release all of the bad criminals. He goes to find his wife and child. Now, obviously, these things aren't going to work out too great for him. A lot of this interesting Mr. Smiles dialogue. He says, "Mr. Smiles took the sad doctor's hand and led him to the greatest place in all of Happyville. It was a magical place filled with toys and games and laughter. The sad doctor needed laughter most of all. It had been so long since he'd laughed, so long since he'd felt much of anything at all. But Mr. Smiles knew how to fix everything. He knew just what to do to make Sad Doctor happy again. So, of course, the Joker being the sinister type, we don't know exactly what that means yet. Of course, Batman shows up to cause some problems for them. And at any rate, the Joker takes a little beating, as he usually does. And that is that. Now, of course, we see here the Joker left in sort of a heap from Batman. And we see Jasper Lane. That was the address that was given to him to go and seek out his family. So he is, of course, dressed as a Joker. And he goes into the apartment, at which point he turns a gun on his wife. And you hear the click. And hard to say if he kills her right then and there, but the son walks in exclaiming, "Daddy," and he is a little bit upset. Now, and once again, like I said, this series is a little bit hard to follow, and this is kind of hard to follow here as well. We're not really sure if he is sort of holding back on doing what the Joker wants him to do. But then, of course, we see the young kid, his son, who is now saying that he would like his father to take him with him on whatever adventures they're going on. So we can see here he's in some anguish. Now, another thing, like I said, in a Black Label book, I'm expecting there to be really great art. Not basically 2 empty pages like I'm looking at right here. So, I mean, I did find that a little bit disconcerting. As we flip the page here now, the tables have turned. And now our detective is behind bars, being questioned by his supervisor. And the Joker is free. And we sort of, I'll read this off to you here. And so as our story finally comes to its end, the sad doctor found himself where he was meant to be all along, in the magic castle. While mean old Mr. Pouts, that would be Batman, sulked in the shadows once more, which of course was where he belonged to. And Mr. Smiles was free to spread joy and mirth. So I guess I'm taking that as the Joker is now free to spread the opposite of joy and mirth. And the story concludes with, "And they all lived happily ever after," the end. So, like I was saying, I am a fan of Black Label books. I really like the stories in them sometimes. I find that they're very easily digestible. Not so much with this one. I had difficulty following the story until the 3rd book. I didn't particularly find the art to be anything spectacular. I know that that's obviously completely subjective, but considering some of the other stuff that I've read from Jeff Lemire, including Black Label stuff like The Question, for me, this one is not gonna be a recommend for me. I do love Black Label, and I don't want anybody to be turned off Black Label because of this, especially when we know that coming soon is going to be Batman 3 Jokers on Black Label, and I'm very much looking forward to that coming out. So don't be shied away from Black Label specifically because of this review. This just isn't one of the better ones. At any rate, you've been watching the Son of the Morning Comics channel. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit that little notification bell. It all helps. At any rate, This is the Son of the Morning. We'll see you next time.